There we go. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Do you prefer to go by like Dr. Lindsay or like kind of
Lindsay's
more
fine.
informal? Okay.
I'm definitely not formal. And, I feel like there's a lot of people who are like, well, you worked hard for that doctorate, but then I'm like, but I'm also not a medical like MD. So it is a little bit misleading. So you just call me Lindsay and that's fine.
I love it. I have a few other friends that are PTs and they've explained it in the exact same way. So I feel like, I don't know, it's just like natural, but also you kind of did earn that. Like you can flex a little.
Yeah, I mean it's a clinical doctorate, but if there was like an emergency on a plane and they were like, "Is there a doctor here?" I would be like, "No,
No,
no."
not me. Not me. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, well, let's just dive right into it. We kind of just covered that you're a physical therapist. Can you just share a little bit more about your specialty and how you help moms in particular?
Yeah. So I started off just doing run-of-the-mill like physical therapy, outpatient, you know, people who sprain their ankle or get rotator cuff surgery. And there was this huge population that was underserved. And it was pregnant, postpartum, anyone with any sort of pelvic floor dysfunction. It was kind of like, sorry, I can't help you. Like we kind of knew some things to do for them, but I just felt like it was kind of a cop out. So I was like, I'll fix this. So I went and I took some more classes and, wanted to help with um, moms like pregnant, postpartum, and people who just have pelvic floor dysfunction and are not mothers. So
Mhm.
that was kind of my avenue into it. And since having my son, I definitely feel a little bit more like kinship towards this population. And what better way to like really get into work is to help the population that you really resonate with. So I'm like, this is easy, just to get to
Yeah.
know moms.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I feel like even in my own pregnancy journey, there wasn't really a lot of talk about pelvic floor, or even after, there wasn't any talk of like any kind of pelvic floor therapy. So, and then I also think that when we do hear pelvic floor, now I feel like maybe it's just because I am pregnant and more getting into it that I hear about it more often. But even now, when I do hear about it, it's always geared towards moms. And so I think that being able to highlight that it's not just moms that go through pelvic floor dysfunction um, is something really important that you do.
Yeah. And it is insane how many just women who experience leakage with jumping, running, and they're like ashamed because they're like, I haven't had kids, or
Yeah.
they lift really heavy and they just kind of joke it off and say, well, if you don't pee during your deadlifts, you're not trying hard enough. And I'm like, oh, no.
That
Like,
is so intense.
I know it's intense. And then the whole population of women that have trauma, sexual trauma, abuse, and they have painful intercourse. And then like they're in a healthy relationship now and they're really seeking guidance and they're struggling. So I also really like to help that population overcome like pelvic pain and things like that too.
Yeah, I love that. That is so needed, like you said. So I can see how you kind of got there to help this population for sure.
Mhm.
And one thing that you mentioned was working out and doing deadlifts and stuff like that. And I know that you are very into kind of like more heavy lifting, that type of exercise, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely gravitate towards that. I feel like it's such a confidence booster to be able to like functionally like lift up some heavy weight
Yeah.
and maybe aesthetically, like I haven't changed and I'm not like the really muscular women that I would admire, but I'm like in this phase of life, I feel strong to be able to take care of my son, run and play and be on the jungle gym and, pick him up and put him on my shoulder. And he's like 45 pounds and I don't even blink. So it's definitely something that I am a huge like advocate for
Mhm.
because it's just, man, if I couldn't do that with my kid, I feel like I would be missing out. Not to say that all moms have to do that with their kids, but
Right.
that was what came naturally to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that heavy lifting.
Yeah. I think you make such a good point about making it like functional because I do feel like there's so many times in motherhood where you're like, oh, okay, there's my back. Or, as your toddler gets older and they drop their toy or whatever, and you're squatting down while having them on the hip, you're just like, wow, this is
Mhm.
not something that you do on a day-to-day basis. Like, so training in those ways, I definitely feel like it sets you up to just like less injury or just be more confident, like you said, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that gap then between helping moms who maybe want to be there, um, but maybe that pelvic floor dysfunction or leakage and things that you mentioned before are kind of making them like hesitant to take that step?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically anybody that would come to me, I would just kind of take them where they're at now.
Yeah.
So if they are newly postpartum and they are super sleep deprived and they are going through the thick of it, they're in the trenches, right? We are going to find something that is doable, like something that's achievable. I'm not going to take that person and be all commando. Is that the right word? I don't know. Like
Yeah, I think you're right.
militant,
Like,
maybe
yeah.
militant and be like, get out of bed. Like, you only had 2 hours of sleep. You better be hitting the gym and going like 80%. No, we're going
Yeah.
to find something that works for them right now. And you need to take a confident step little by little, because if you jump ahead and then you're like, see, I'm not ready for it now, my back hurts, my hip hurts, I feel horrible, that's not a confident step that just builds upon itself.
Right.
So really taking them where they're at and then saying, let's set some realistic goals, because everything goes into it, right? Like, not just the fact that you lift weights, right? It's your sleep, it's your stress management, it's how well you're fueling your body. And so basically we do like a really thorough assessment of where they're at and then what their goals are. And if they have really lofty goals and they're freshly postpartum, we say, you know what, this might be a longer process than what you think, like it's not just a 2 month, 3 month thing, we might be thinking longer term for them.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. I do the same thing with my clients. And sometimes I feel like that's one of the most important things is that mindset shift of like, it's okay for things to take a longer time. If you
mhm,
want to get to that goal, we have to start here, like you said, meeting your body where it's at. It just went through something, um, right? Like one of the biggest athletic events anyone will experience ever in their life. Like we need to take the time to rest, recover, and then we can move towards those goals.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
amen to that.
And
Okay.
then, it is a precious time and you can always get fitness back after working hard, but you
Yeah.
can't always get back that time and bonding. And if you're just super stressed about bouncing back or trying to lose weight or trying to look like yourself again, not to say that anything's wrong with that, but if
Right.
it's causing a lot of like emotional distress and you're just trying to get there so fast without giving yourself grace,
Yeah.
then it does become more dysfunctional, versus, hey, let's just give ourselves time. I think I gave myself 2 years. I was like, I'm going to just take 2 years. Not like I took it off. Like I didn't, not like I just said, I'm not exercising, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I took away that like sport or competitive nature of like trying to like get back. So I just was like, I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to be there for my son. I'm going to try to sleep. And, it was the middle of COVID lockdowns too, which
Oh,
obviously
wow.
totally different time period. So,
Yeah.
but it was so much lower stress than had I been like, man, I got to get back to this specific weight or size or my max lift of squat or whatever it is.
Just like jumping right back into it, which if you were exercising prior to pregnancy, it can be so hard to, like, I know for me, it's so hard to rest. It's so hard to not feel productive or,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like. And so one of the things that I often hear from moms when we talk about, those first phases of exercise, getting back into it and it really being slowed down, is they don't feel like it's effective or like productive in a way because they're used to exercise, being measured by how much you sweat or, like you said, like lifting heavy and like, your body's in total fatigue and you're like, wow, that was a great workout, right? And
Mhm.
so obviously pelvic floor therapy is a lot more slowed down and kind of concentrated. So what kind of advice do you have for moms around that and kind of making that mental shift of this is effective, this is productive, just in a different way?
Yeah, that's really good to note because it can look slower, like you mentioned, and a little bit quieter. But underneath the surface of any sort of problem or dysfunction, what we would say, like if you're symptomatic in any way, like, hey, like I'm recovering from a vaginal delivery or a C-section, there might be tears, there's tissues that actually need to take time to heal. If you just take that freshly healed wound and start, going all aggressive with it, that is not productive. That's counterproductive, right?
Mm.
So there are strategic timelines for healing that we do need to follow. So even if you are the biggest, strongest athlete on the planet and you go through a delivery of some sort, there is a trauma to the body that does take time to heal. Now, sometimes you might see a CrossFit athlete that's like 6 weeks postpartum and they're already in competition, like that was a very purposeful decision for them, and we can respect that decision. We don't have to follow that and
Right.
say that's what I need to do. Every person can take in and weigh the pros and cons for themselves of like, hey, is this what I really need to be doing right now? Do I want to be doing this right now? And
Right.
then pelvic floor specific rehab is so closely tied with our stress. So the
Mhm.
pelvic floor will retain tension and tightness. And if you are constantly holding those muscles tight because you're stressed and not sleeping and really, really focused on like hitting it so hard that you don't know how to relax those muscles, then again, it's counterproductive. So knowing that just because it doesn't feel like you're hitting it as hard, the relaxation is just as important as the strengthening, and those go hand in hand for healing,
Yeah.
specifically the pelvic floor.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that because I feel like it is a piece that gets missed a lot. I was just talking to a client a few days ago and she was talking about like a traumatic birth and um we went into how, like, I read this article on how women hold tension and trauma in their hips and around that area, and men, I think it's like their shoulders and stuff. And so things like pelvic floor therapy, hip mobility, stuff like that, I feel like can also be really emotional for for moms who have had like some trauma birth. So I think that you mentioning the stress management of it and really relaxing and slowing down and working through that is so powerful. And like you said, if you don't, it's counterproductive. I really just like that one word. I was like, bing, like clicked for me where I was like, I just love that. It's so simple. It is effective. And if we do the opposite, it's counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that, that word shift. So for somebody listening who is like, okay, pelvic floor, yeah, I understand, like, I birthed a baby, that's part of my pelvic floor, but I don't really know anything else about it. It's kind of like a broad overview of what's all included, even in like when you say pelvic floor therapy.
Yeah, that's a really good question because obviously we have pelvic floor muscles, right? And those are very specific.
Yeah,
And in a broad sense, that's not a very large area. Like I have my model here.
I love it. I love the
Uh,
model. I'm a visual learner.
it's not that big of an area, right? Like if you think this is your sits bone, so if you were to be sitting for a long period of time and you're like, ooh, my bum kind of is bony, this is where you're sitting, right? We've got the anus, the vaginal opening right here. But if you think about all that connects to this area, it's the glutes, it's the hip muscles that cause the hips to go in and out. It's the core muscles all around the abdomen, and then all the back muscles too, right? And then we've got muscles of the inner thigh that connect really close right here too. So it's really not isolated to just that little zone.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of times people come to me and they have dysfunctional breathing and their neck and shoulders are really tight, and then after you carry a baby, your posture's different. And we need to learn how to reconnect with the core. And then women who are trying to run or jump, those forces from the feet and how you impact the ground, those also play a role with how it transmits those forces up to the pelvic floor. And so it's really everything.
Yeah.
So it's like pelvic floor physical therapy for me is, yes, we might start with awareness of the pelvic floor muscles, how to relax, how to contract, how to use the core to connect. But then it's also, how does my body move realistically for what I do, right? And being able to manage those forces so that our muscles take on the role that our pelvic floor muscles don't really need to be doing.
Right. And like you said, kind of overstressing it even further. That makes a lot of sense. Something that really shocked me when I was postpartum, I had a lot of tailbone pain. And so when I started going to pelvic floor physical therapy, she's like, oh, like that makes sense. That's part of your pelvic floor. And I was like, what? And so we did, I was like, what? So we did a lot of like glute work and strengthening, like you said, kind of those surrounding areas. And I got one of those like dome pillows and stuff like that. But it was very shocking to me, that your tailbone was part of your pelvic floor. And so me going to pelvic floor therapy really started me down the rabbit hole of like connecting everything. And like, oh, this makes so much sense. So thank you for going through that. So what are some simple kind of starter exercises that moms can be doing? I have a double question. And is it stuff that we should start doing during pregnancy?
Okay, so yes, there are things that you definitely want to be doing during pregnancy. So I would recommend a pregnant individual to be seen by a pelvic floor physical therapist. And I've done this before where I've gotten somebody who's like, I just want to kind of see where my pelvic floor is at, So we do the assessment and we check to see if they're symptomatic with certain things. And sometimes I'm like, you're good to go. Like keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right track. They had perfect control. And then there's certain time periods where you might want to start learning about birth prep, because that's definitely a distinct time period if you're going to be delivering vaginally, right? To be able to control those muscles in a specific way that you're not like squeezing the baby out, but
Right.
like being able to lengthen and relax and push the baby out in that way. So there's
Yeah.
like birth prep type that's
Hmm.
maybe, towards the end of your third trimester, or like in the third trimester. And then you can also start learning how to do perineal kind of massage and tissue lengthening and trying to get that tissue elasticity so that we don't tear
Yeah.
as much. And then, so as far as like exercises go, I generally, as a blanket, what everybody should be able to tolerate is breathing, meditation, and pelvic floor relaxation movements.
Yeah.
More often than not, I've seen people who have tight and tense pelvic floors with pregnancy and postpartum, more so than, hey, we really need to like Kegel your way to urine retention. It is, again, kind of counterproductive, like we've talked about, to just start off with Kegels. And that's mostly what people
Yeah.
talk about is like, let's Kegel. And a lot of people are doing them incorrectly. And then a lot of people are doing them too often and too hard.
Mm,
So that can, if you already have a tight pelvic floor, if you're sitting there and you're like, but I'm doing Kegels, why do I keep leaking, right?
yeah.
You can be over tightening the pelvic floor, increasing your leakage symptoms. You think stronger is better, stronger is better. But strong needs to be done in both directions, right? We can't just squeeze up without being able to like control the lengthening of
Yeah.
the pelvic floor. They need to kind of move like a trampoline does, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's where I would generally recommend everyone to start. And if, people are far enough along in their postpartum and they can, do a little biofeedback, that would be, insert a finger
Okay.
and
Yeah.
just practice breathing and see what your pelvic floor does. If you inhale and exhale, notice, does your pelvic floor move? Because it should.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then, maybe it would be a good idea to get some professional guidance and coaching on how to move the pelvic floor the right way. So that's very basic foundational stuff that I would recommend.
I love that. I think that is a great place to start. And I actually love that you mentioned the biofeedback too, because even just in, personal training with any muscle, I preach about mind muscle connection and really bringing awareness to when you're doing a bicep curl, where are you feeling it? Because if
Mhm.
you're feeling it in your glutes, then you're probably not doing it right. So I think the pelvic floor and just and any muscle in general, we can lose that connection. We can just become disconnected from, whether we're sitting too long or whatever. We just don't do movements like day to day. And so I think our pelvic floor is one of those where we can easily become disconnected from it. And like you said, everybody just hears about Kegels. And I remember learning from a physical therapist once. She said, if all you could ever do or all you ever did for your biceps, using that as another example, was a bicep curl, that would get your biceps would get pretty burnt out. And that would also be pretty boring. A Kegel is not the only exercise that you can do for
Mhm.
pelvic floor. And like you said, nor is it always the most productive.
Mhm.
It's just the one that we always hear about. So I love that you touched on just like breathing and that awareness. And then And the biofeedback, I like that advice. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's so nice to teach and coach women that they can do that. You have permission,
Yeah.
Sometimes we're just so caught up in, well, no one told me I can do this or didn't coach me through it. I mean,
Mm,
obviously you don't need to do biofeedback like a week after you just gave birth and you got tearing and healing, and don't do that, but after time,
mm,
um, you can kind of explore and see what's working and what's not and what's moving and what's not. And then once you learn that skill, you take that with you and you can apply it for a lifetime, because we're not just postpartum for a small chunk of time, like you then become perimenopausal. We're going to have hormone changes and then go through menopause. And then, we need to have these skills for a lifetime. I know a lot of people complain and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to go through physical therapy for my pelvic floor. Like, I'm going to plan on having more kids and I just want to fix it after,
mhm.
And I'm like, that's like learning Spanish after you go abroad for a year. You're like, I'll just wait till after I'm done living in Spain to learn Spanish. It doesn't make any sense.
I love that analogy.
It's like, you need this now.
Yeah. Yeah. Should probably do the work like before you go abroad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I think, like you said, people are really hesitant. Like physical therapy in general, I hear people be so hesitant with, or maybe they just aren't giving it the time. And so they quit early. I don't want to say quit, but they stop early, or they're just like, it's not working for me, so I'm not going to continue. What is like a kind of consistent or effective timeline to give yourself before saying, hey, maybe I need to talk to my physical therapist about why this isn't working, or
Mhm.
maybe it's time to go to a new physical therapist?
Mhm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because not everybody's going to be the same. I met with a woman and she came up to me and she was like, oh, yeah, I did months of physical therapy and it did nothing for me. And I want to get back to running. And I asked her, and I'm glad I asked her this. And I said, did your physical therapist ever have you run? And she said, no. All we did were table exercises. And so there was this huge disconnect between her goals and the therapy that she was doing. They did not look like each other. So if
Mm,
you are going to want to be that person who runs or goes and lifts weights or picks up your kid,
yeah,
your physical therapy should resemble what you want your life to look like. So I feel like that's a really good place to start. But generally speaking, minimum of 3 months for continuous and consistent work.
mm,
Minimum. Like I try to urge all of my clients to sign up for that minimum 3 months. And if they don't want to do that, then I say we need to readjust your goalpost. Because if
yeah,
you want to be here and you want this step, then this is as far as we're going to get. Right.
exactly. Yeah,
And then if you want to do higher level things and your severity of symptoms is greater, then the length of time that it's going to take is going to be greater. So it is hard to give like a time frame, but definitely not giving up, because sometimes I tell people it takes what it takes. And I'll do people's therapy program for 3 months and we are regimented. I have an app and I get people on that app and I know that they've done their home exercises or not.
yeah,
And based on their consistency and their check-ins with me, and we talk all the way through. So if anybody's being seen by a provider and they want to understand, why am I still only doing this when I want to be doing this? And your therapist should have a good answer for you,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
they might be like, based off of your strength, we need to be here first, and you're not mastering this skill. But if you never ask or talk to them, then you're never going to know. You're just going to be frustrated that I'm still stuck at this low level. Then you
Yeah.
can ask, okay, well, how can I be better at getting to the next level? Oh, well, it looks like you're 50% consistent with your home exercise program. Like maybe we need to work on that a little bit more. What's your stress look like? Like, do you have support? There's so many other things that go into it that might lengthen the time.
Yeah. No, I love what you said, even though there's not like a distinct timeline, there are things to look out for. One is your physical therapist aligning your goals to what the treatment plan is? Two, how consistent are you being in that treatment plan, and kind of doing a little self-reflection on that. And then two, having an open-ended conversation with the physical therapist to understand why you're starting where you're starting and kind of why the progression is at the pace that it is. So those are three fantastic mile markers, so to speak, to look out for in any training plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Really,
definitely.
yeah. And I always tell people, even with like a medical doctor, if you're seeing any kind of specialist and they're not even willing to have an open dialogue conversation with you, or in this case, understand your goals, like you said in the beginning about that client, if you don't have an idea of like where you're going, and somebody's not even willing to talk to you about that, that might not be the right provider for you or the best provider for you. Even me as a health coach or a personal trainer, if I don't know what your goals are, I'm not just going to hand you a blanket personal training plan, or like a CrossFit plan when your goal is just to get back into some daily functional exercise, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. It wouldn't be um, productive for you if your goal is to get to that level and I'm just giving you maybe Pilates exercises or something. So
Mm-hmm.
that part is so important. So I love that your programming combines all of that, for sure.
Yeah. And it does take a little self-advocacy,
Mm-hmm.
and wellness providers, for the most part, we care, like we care. And sometimes you just might be in a facility that is a little bit overbooked. I know when I worked for other companies, like I might be seeing 3 or 4 people in an hour, and you're not going to have their one-on-one attention. And
Yeah.
so taking that into consideration, you have to speak up and ask questions, but then you also have to, with a little bit of understanding that they are probably doing the best they can. And if you're not getting the care you deserve, then you should go somewhere else. And that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. That is okay.
Mm-hmm.
So just like you said, give people permission for that. I think something that I've run into as well is moms just thinking, or they'll come to me and say, well, my doctor told me that's just normal. So I think there is a lot with pelvic floor, again, specifically, that maybe just gets swept under the rug because of either we think it's normal, or, somebody else said, oh yeah, I dealt with that. So how do we help reframe, just because something is common doesn't necessarily mean that it's normal or that we have to live with it, so to speak.
Yeah. It's so hard to sometimes change the mindset of taking care of ourselves. I was
Yeah.
just telling somebody the other day that I'm so used to just dealing with things that I have an old car and my air conditioner is not the best. So in Arizona, it is so hot, right? And
Yes.
my AC kind of quit working. And what did I do? I just like got ice packs and I'm like stuffing my son with ice packs in his car seat. And I
Okay.
almost got like one of those little cooler things. And my husband's like, Lindsay, just go get your AC fixed. But that's the same mentality of women who are just experiencing leakage and they're just like, oh, I just wear pads now.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
they're just like, oh, for the rest of your life, you're just going to wear pads all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just
That doesn't seem comfortable.
the ridiculousness of that. I didn't even think to go get it fixed,
Right.
because I'm just like, I'm just going to pull myself up by my bootstraps and I'm just going to make do with what I have. And here's ice packs. That's a really quick.
I have other things to deal with and get to, and this seems like a quick fix. So we're going to
Fix.
go with it.
Right. So I think that is hard to do because yeah, it takes time. It's an investment. And I think, with my air conditioning, I'm like, I didn't quite want to accept that I had to get it fixed. And it's the same with our bodies. Like everybody's still waiting for it to just like go back to normal. But if you're like a year postpartum and it's not gone back to normal, like by that point, it most likely is not just gonna, you know. So then we need to think, okay, let's intervene and fix it because yeah, you don't need to be suffering for the rest of your life.
With no air conditioning in there, going to heat. No.
Yeah, I was like looking on Amazon and I'm like, oh, are there like cooling things that I can put on the car seat? Like I was like really going into it.
Oh yeah, and there are. I have seen
Yeah.
them for like strollers and car seats. Oh, there totally are. Oh, that's so funny. Oh my god. Yeah, that's really funny. I like that analogy. And I do think that once, all it takes is like that one step to even just go and have an evaluation, or that one friend to say, go, just go see somebody. Like you don't have to live with that. I did such and such and it worked for me, or whatever. It just takes like one small step, and that can kind of give you maybe the reframe or the confidence to say, hey, maybe I don't need to deal with this. And I was totally going somewhere with that, and then I lost my train of thought in the middle of it. But um, yeah, basically we don't need to. Oh, that's where I was going with it. Okay, mom brain. It's empowering. It's empowering once you do take that small step, once you do start to build a little bit of momentum. It's empowering to, like, that's a tangible um, improvement that you can see. If you're leaking to the point where you're wearing pads all the time, and then you get to a place where you no longer have to do that's such an empowering feeling, and I'm sure life changing for people. I personally, don't experience that, so I can't exactly relate, but I can just imagine the shift in your day-to-day life that would change by doing that. So it can be so empowering, and it just takes that first step to, like you said, make that decision of like, I just like need to do this investment. I just need to go and first step, get the assessment. That's it. Like,
Yeah.
one thing at a time.
Yeah. And most of the time at the assessments that I do, like we're talking about, all right, what is actually feasible for you right now? And for some women, it's not feasible for them based off of whatever reasons that they dedicate this specific time to it. So yes, it is a financial investment for the most part. And time, and energy and mental load. And like, it isn't just go to physical therapy once a week and you're like done. Like I am going to start asking you to think about these things on a daily basis. I might not have you do like a half-hour workout every single day, but We need to start implementing these things, which can be a mental load that some women are not ready for yet. And
Right.
so I might recommend and just be like, hey, based off of what you're telling me, like now might not be the best time. I can give you a few things to work on in the meantime, but until we're ready to like be coachable,
Yeah.
because so many times it's going to take someone telling you something you don't want to hear. Like, okay, Lindsay, I'm going to need you to start doing this. And they're like, I don't want to. And then I get all these other, I call them reasons, but some people call them excuses.
Yeah.
People list off all these reasons of why they can't do something. And I'm like, but if this is your outcome that you want, then this needs to be the process. It doesn't have to be like this, right? We can go slow and steady, but we do need to be steady. So the assessment, you can kind of figure out what's doable. And then hopefully, like if you are in a time frame of doing something consistently and being and feeling coachable, then I would highly urge you to find somebody that can coach you through it. And I know, Katie, you do some coaching for women postpartum, and sometimes that can be all you need, like a lot of women just need to get back to strength and, good function. And that in and of itself can help reverse some pelvic floor dysfunction. So there are a lot of avenues to go through. And sometimes after you've done therapy, you may need surgery depending on what you've got going on. You might need the mesh sling or a prolapse if you have a pretty severe prolapse, and that's okay too. But at least you've explored your options conservatively, because my least favorite thing is for someone to say, my doctor says that I just need surgery. And I'm like, did you try therapy? And they say no. And I'm like, well, let's explore your options so you at least go into it having informed consent.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm all about informed decision making. I'm a why person. So like I will go deep in the rabbit hole to understand something, even that's like happening within my own body. But I also use that for my clients. So consistency, we both know consistency over perfection is way more important. And those that can ebb and flow, motivation can ebb and flow, time, like you said. But if you stay consistent, that's when you're going to see the results over perfection. And so something that I like to remind my clients is of their why. We spend like a lot of our first few sessions going over, a deep dive of why this goal is important for you, why this treatment plan, we can say, like whether it's, working out or changing nutrition or pelvic floor therapy, how is this going to change your life? It's like one of the biggest questions that I like to ask my clients. And a lot of times it gets to an emotional place. And I think sometimes it needs to, because that's what really is going to anchor us into staying consistent, especially when like we have a million other things like dishes, laundry, birthday parties, a million other things, and slowing down and giving ourselves 10 minutes to do pelvic floor exercises or however long. So we can anchor ourselves into why that's important and how it's going to actually change the day-to-day life, the functionality of our life. It can bring us to that place of, okay, I am just going to take that 10 minutes and go. So yeah, I love that. So speaking of that consistency and getting that support, I know you mentioned that you do have a group pelvic floor coaching program coming up.
This is kind of new. So a lot of my programming has either been like one-on-one. I'm kind of custom building to them. But I'm going to start doing a coaching program where you can do it in a group. And if you have a similar issue, so it's not like someone with left pinky toe pain and then someone who has leakage and prolapse are going to be in the same kind of group. But I have programs that I can build for similar issues because you all kind of need to start here.
Yeah.
You start similarly. You think you're special, but you're not. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a group and I'm going to have, in some in-person meetings mixed in, and then online programming and accountability within a group setting. So if you have a friend or 2 or 5 that all have urinary leakage, and you all want to get some help with it, what better way than to all get into the group together and make sure everybody is, I'll screen people to see if they're appropriate for the group or not. And then they get that attention and need, but with friends.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know. I wish I joined any kind of mom group earlier.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a pelvic floor coaching group. It could be a mommy and me, a book club, like anything. I wish I had that sooner. It really does take a village. And I think, again, something like this, where it is harder to like build that consistency, and maybe we still have a little bit of shame around that area or anything like that, having a group of people where you're like, I'm not the only one dealing with this. This is a totally natural thing. Um, Again, can just be really empowering. So I love that. You mentioned kind of being able to program for a similar issue, right? So will you
Mhm.
have kind of different groups going on, or will this be kind of one core group to start? And if so, who are you looking for?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, it's for right now, I'm going to start with one specific group. So this first group will be people who experience, urinary leakage. They might have diastasis. They have prolapse or urinary urgency. So
Okay.
a lot of these issues, we could compile them in a group, and it's pressure management. So these people are going to be all in that group because we all need to learn how to manage our intra-abdominal pressure with different movements. So we would start foundational and then just over a 12-week program, get to where we can do all the things we would want to be doing, within reason. I'm not going to have you deadlift 500 pounds. That's not this specific program. But it'll get you to like understand how to manage my pressure during different things so that if you sneeze or you jump or randomly go to the trampoline park,
Yeah,
know how to manage that pressure.
I love that. I think that's something, again, we don't even think about, but there's so much connection there, like that mind muscle connection. So important. So awesome. And then how can people find you, find this program, work with you, ask questions, anything like that? Where can we find you?
Yeah. So you can always send me a DM on Instagram. And it's just Lindsay Saldana DPT. And then, or just send me a text because I have a phone number and I text people. And then what we do is we just hop on a free consult. So you can just say, hey, I heard about your program. I'd like to just see if it fits with me, and then we'll chat. And then sometimes I might be like, hey, this doesn't sound like it's appropriate for you. Or yes, let's go ahead and do like an assessment and see where you're at to get a baseline. And then get you into the group, and then all the women would start at the same time. So I'm planning on starting in about 6 to 8 weeks so that I can get enough women, and I'm thinking about 6 to 8 women.
Okay.
So then it wouldn't be like a group of 50. We're doing small group,
Yeah.
and it would be 12 weeks. And yeah, it's super easy. Just I'm sure you could put my phone number in the notes
Oh
of the
yeah.
thing, and then just send
Absolutely.
me a text.
Yeah, awesome. Yep, I will put all that information in the show notes. And also, at the time of recording, it's like the beginning of October. So this will come out in November, like the beginning of November. And so at that point, it might be like, sounds like end of November, beginning of December is kind of the time frame. So
Yep.
just to give relevance to everyone where we're at here. Awesome. Okay, now that we've kind of talked about professional stuff and all of that, I like to ask some personal lifestyle questions.
Okay.
Um, but so, what is your favorite, like, quick self care thing to do as a mom? And how do you find the time?
Oh, yeah. I think I don't have my notes up, but I think I said, I just joined a gym that has childcare.
Yes, the other is what you said.
So I think, I am a very good mom in sprints. I'm not an endurance mom. So I know some women who are like, I want to be there for every moment. And I have to work during the day. So my son does childcare, daycare. He's in pre-K now. But so mornings and evenings, I'm very good on the sprints. So weekends are kind of a little long for me. I'm just out of my depth with the long days. So what my husband and I do is we've joined a gym in the area called EOS. They have very, very affordable childcare, and I can take him for up to 2 hours.
Yeah.
So my husband and I, we will drop him off, get like an hour workout in, and then sit in the hot tub or the sauna, cold plunge, I'll shower, I'll do some light stretching, we'll talk.
Love it.
And I just need that time on those really long days. But if I were a stay-at-home mom, I can guarantee that I would drop him off for 2 hours every day, because he plays with all the toys that I don't have, and he gets to see all the kids, and then attention from people who have that like
Yes.
energy that I might not have in the moment. And then I come back to it a much more like fulfilled woman. Like I'm rejuvenated, and then I can give my full direct attention, and maybe I'm just a little bit more attentive and I'm not so snippy. And when you manage your health, mental and physical, you're going to have more gas in the tank to give. So
Yeah.
that's what I do.
I love that. I love that you like painted a picture of having these like gym dates, which I feel like I need to get my husband on board for. I actually have thought of joining EOS. I think your child has to be 2 to go to the daycare. So we're like right on the cusp of doing that. Because I love how you just explained being like a sprint versus an endurance mom resonates really hard with me. I am a work from home mom. And so I love him. He is with me all the time. And I am not ashamed to say that like I don't feel guilty anymore for taking that time to myself. Cause like you said, I am one of those people that gets like irritable and stressed really easily. And I've seen myself take it out, especially in the throwing food on the floor phase. So I'm just like, okay, I've seen a big difference if I don't take that time versus I do take that time. Whatever that is, going for a walk, taking a shower, watching anything on Bravo, like whatever that is. But I just need to fill my cup a little bit. So
100%.
thank you for sharing that. And just a reminder too. What is something that you wish every mom listening could hear from you? Like if you had like 30 seconds in an elevator, what would be like your number one thing that you'd want them to walk away with?
Oh boy. Oh man.
I know. Okay.
Oh, I want every mom to know that they are strong and capable, and that they can do so much more than they think they can, and that, a little bit goes a long way. So a little bit of self-care, a little bit of stress management, exercise, all of that
Yeah.
compounded over time makes a huge difference. So just because you don't think that you can go 0 to 60 right now, if you do a little bit, I mean, it's kind of like the turtle and the hare, like you just got to keep going and
Yeah.
you can do it. So that's it.
I love that. Love it. Great elevator speech. I'd walk out of that elevator and be like, I feel ready to take on my day.
I can do
For
it.
sure. I love it. And then one last question. Um, what's one thing that you wish more moms knew about your field, specifically personal training, or sorry, physical therapy?
I wish more people knew that it didn't have to always be invasive,
Mm,
because
like that.
I know I have a block, and I would have a block if I knew that every single therapy session I was in a vulnerable position. And, sometimes internal exams feel that way and they
Yeah.
can be that way. I never like do those exams on women that are even remotely hesitant
Mm,
whatsoever. We find alternative ways of doing these same assessments. I can get pretty much a lot of the gist of things. Sometimes we're doing just palpation with clothes on. Sometimes I'm coaching them with external palpation from a video that I just send them that they can do at home.
yeah.
And so there are a lot of different ways that we can glean information, and it is never a forced, vulnerable thing. And I don't care if you say, I don't want an internal exam. I do not care.
We don't have to
Less
do it.
work for me. Like, I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is a really important thing for people to hear, just again, to kind of reduce that hesitancy and feel more confident and comfortable. So, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing a lot of your tips, both professional and personal. Thank you for making this this opportunity just more accessible to women and um, talking about it more, making people more aware of it. Thank you for what you do, and thanks for being here to share.
You're welcome. And thank you for what you do. I'm glad we can kind of be in the same space and help women in similar ways.
I agree. I agree. I love it. Very empowering. Thank you to all of our listeners as well, and I will see you in the next episode. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. I forget how. Like switch